The summer sun blazed down on the lakefront property, its golden light glinting off the rippling surface of the water. For over 3 generations, the cabin had stood as a symbol of peace and family pride. It wasn't just a cabin, it was history. Built by the hands of a grandfather who returned from war and wanted a place where his children and grandchildren could find joy, laughter, and healing, the cabin held more memories than could ever be counted. Fishing trips at dawn, family cookouts under the stars, children learning to swim for the first time, every wall and window carried a story. For Marcus, a quiet, hard-working man in his 40s, the cabin wasn't just a summer retreat. It was a connection to his roots. He had grown up in the city, where his father worked long shifts as a bus driver and his mother balanced multiple jobs. Summers at the cabin were the only time the family could escape the grind of urban life and breathe in the fresh scent of pine. As an adult, Marcus inherited the cabin, determined to preserve it for his own children. But the world had changed. The once isolated lake community had turned into a hot spot for vacationers, drawing in developers, wealthy retirees, and those who thought their money gave them authority over everyone else. When the local homeowners association (HOA) formed, Marcus already sensed trouble. They promised to protect property values and maintain community standards. In reality, they acted more like petty tyrants, issuing fines for grass that grew too high, dictating what colors houses could be painted, and even mandating what type of mailboxes residents could use. Marcus paid little attention at first. The cabin had stood long before the HOA, and he wasn't about to let anyone tell him how his grandfather's place should look. But soon the notices started arriving, letters claiming he owed dues, warning of late fees, and eventually threatening legal action. Marcus knew the truth. He didn't owe them a dime. His family had legal rights to the land, secured in deeds and records that dated back nearly 70 years. Still, the HOA didn't care. They wanted control, and Marcus's cabin, rustic and unpolished compared to the fancy new houses around it, was an eyesore in their eyes. The tension escalated over months. Marcus tried reasoning with them, presenting paperwork that proved he wasn't under their jurisdiction. But every conversation ended the same: smug smiles, veiled threats, and dismissive tones. Everyone has to follow the rules, they'd say, ignoring that Marcus wasn't part of their association in the first place. He knew what it really was. They saw him as an outsider, not just because he refused to bend, but because of the color of his skin. Then came the day everything shattered. Marcus returned from a work trip to find the cabin leveled. Bulldozers had torn through the walls where his family once gathered, scattering splintered wood, broken dishes, and fragments of memory across the dirt. The smell of fresh earth mixed with dust filled the air. A laminated sign was nailed to a post in the ground: property demolished due to non-payment of HOA fees. Marcus stood frozen, his fists trembling at his sides. Anger surged through him, not just at the destruction of his family's legacy, but at the arrogance, the sheer audacity, of those who thought they could erase his history with machines and paperwork. He wasn't alone, though. His family wasn't ordinary. Many of them had dedicated their lives to serving their country, men and women who wore badges, carried federal authority, and knew how to navigate both the law and justice. And if the HOA thought Marcus would quietly accept their crime, they were about to discover just how wrong they were. Marcus didn't call the HOA president, and he didn't waste time sending emails that would be ignored. Instead, he picked up his phone and made one call, to his sister, Naomi. She wasn't just his younger sibling, she was a federal investigator with the Department of Justice. Calm but sharp, Naomi had built her career taking down white-collar criminals who thought they were untouchable. When she heard the rage in her brother's voice and the devastation in the background, her tone changed instantly. "They demolished it, without a court order?" she asked, already scribbling notes. "They didn't even notify me," Marcus replied, his jaw tight. "Just a sign in the dirt. They called it non-payment of fees. Fees I never even owed." Naomi exhaled slowly, the way she did when she smelled a case that reeked of corruption. "Send me pictures. Every angle. We're not letting this go." The next call was to their cousin Darius, a U.S. Marshal known for handling fugitive retrieval. Darius wasn't one for long speeches. When Marcus explained, there was silence on the line for a moment, followed by a single sentence: "They just picked the wrong family." By nightfall, the cabin's remains were cordoned off, not by the HOA's smug board members, but by professionals in federal jackets, snapping photos, collecting debris as evidence, and examining the bulldozer tracks that still marred the soil. The HOA members, sipping wine in their lakefront mansions, had no idea that their little act of community enforcement had crossed into federal crimes, trespassing, destruction of private property, civil rights violations, and possibly even conspiracy. The following morning, Naomi and Darius walked into the HOA's headquarters, a glossy glass building that doubled as a clubhouse. Residents lounging by the pool turned their heads as the two agents, badges flashing on their belts, strode inside with Marcus behind them. The receptionist tried to stop them, but one sharp look from Darius sent her retreating. The board members were seated around a polished oak table, sipping coffee and reviewing their agenda. Their smugness evaporated the moment Naomi laid down a thick folder. "Federal jurisdiction has been invoked," she announced, her voice cutting through the room like steel. "Every action you've taken against Mr. Carter is under review, and demolition of his property constitutes criminal destruction of private property under U.S. law." One board member, a balding man with a permanent smirk, tried to laugh it off. Now, there must be some misunderstanding. Everyone has to pay dues. That cabin was in violation." Naomi cut him short. "He's not part of your HOA. Never was. You knowingly falsified documents, extorted him, and illegally ordered a demolition. That's fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of authority." The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus watched their faces pale as Darius leaned forward, his voice low but dangerous. "You didn't just destroy a cabin. You destroyed federal property, because that land is tied to government-protected inheritance rights. Do you have any idea what kind of storm you've invited?" For the first time, the board looked afraid. Their arrogance cracked under the weight of real authority, the kind they couldn't bully or bribe. And Marcus knew this was only the beginning.